David and Susan retired at 65, and on paper they'd done everything right. The house was paid off, they had $500,000 in super between them. No debt, 2 grown kids, a decent car in the driveway. If you'd asked anyone, they'd have said this couple was set. 10 years later, at 75, they were down to almost nothing, counting the days between pension payments, saying no to things they used to say yes to, quietly stressed about every power bill. And the hardest part was, they couldn't understand how it happened. They didn't get scammed. They didn't gamble it away. They didn't have some catastrophe. They just made a series of small, ordinary, completely avoidable mistakes. The same ones I watched drain retiree after retiree. So today I want to walk you through exactly what went wrong for David and Susan, one mistake at a time, because every single one of them is preventable if you can see it coming. One quick note before we start. David and Susan aren't real people. They're a composite stitched together from a pattern that plays out in thousands of Australian households. But nothing about their story is exaggerated. This is how a comfortable retirement quietly falls apart. Let's begin. Their first mistake happened in the very first few years, and it's the one that does the most damage, because it's the most fun. They'd worked 40 years, and now they were free, so they spent. A big overseas trip, then another. A caravan, a kitchen renovation. While we can still enjoy it. All lovely, all understandable, but they were pulling $40,000–50,000 a year out of their super in those early years, way more than it could sustain. And here's the part that turned a splurge into a wound. The markets had a bad couple of years, right when they were drawing the most. When you're taking big withdrawals out of a falling balance, you're selling more of your investments at low prices to fund the same lifestyle, and the balance never recovers the way it would have. That's called sequencing risk, and it quietly took years off the life of their money. To put it in numbers, a balance like theirs might have safely supported drawing $25,000, maybe $30,000 a year alongside a part pension. David and Susan were pulling closer to 50. In a good year, that gap doesn't feel like a mistake, it feels like finally living. But run it for 5 years through a soft patch in the markets, and it's the difference between money that lasts 30 years and money that lasts 12. By 70, the super was already half gone, and they hadn't even noticed the danger. Their second mistake was a reaction to the first. They got scared. They'd watched the balance drop, so they did what frightened people do. They pulled what was left out of investments and parked it in the bank to keep it safe. And for the next few years, that money earned them almost nothing, well under inflation, so it was quietly losing value every year. But here's the cruel twist, the one they never saw. Centrelink didn't care that the bank was paying them next to nothing. Because of deeming, Centrelink assumed that money was earning a set rate and assessed them on income they weren't actually getting, which reduced the part pension they'd started to receive. So they were losing to inflation on one side and being deemed on the other, all because safe felt safer than it was. Their third mistake was the saddest, because it made them live poorer than they ever needed to. David and Susan didn't understand how the age pension actually works. They believed that once the super was gone, they'd have nothing, so they lived in permanent fear of spending, denying themselves for years, terrified of the day the money ran out. But that day was never going to be the cliff they imagined. Because the age pension is a safety net that rises as your savings fall. As their super drew down, their pension was quietly climbing to meet them. And by the time the super was nearly gone, they were entitled to close to the full pension, plus the concession card, plus the supplements. Their income was never going to hit zero. If they'd understood that from the start, they could have spent their healthy 60s with confidence instead of dread, and let the pension do the job it was built to do. They suffered for a fear that wasn't even true. Their fourth mistake was a generous one, which is what makes it so common. Around 70, wanting to help, they gave their daughter $80,000 for a house deposit. A beautiful thing to do. But they didn't know the gifting rules, that you can only give away $10,000 a year, up to $30,000 over 5 years before Centrelink starts counting it against you. So most of that $80,000 became a deprived asset, gone from their bank account, but still counted by Centrelink as if they had it, for 5 full years, which cut their pension at the exact moment they'd reduced their own savings to help someone else. They lost the money and kept the pension reduction. Done a few years earlier, or structured differently, it could have cost them nothing. And their 5th mistake tied all the others together. In 10 years of retirement, they never once sat down with anyone who could see their whole picture. They never got advice. So nobody told them to move their super into pension phase, where the earnings would have been tax-free instead of taxed. Nobody flagged that they qualified for the Commonwealth Seniors Health Card for years before they claimed it, missing out on thousands in concessions. Nobody helped them build a simple drawdown plan so they knew how much they could safely spend. Each of those was a small fixable thing, left unfixed and stacked on top of each other. They were the difference between money that lasted and money that didn't. A few $100s for a proper advice session at 65 could have saved them tens of thousands over the next decade. The moment it finally hit them was completely ordinary. Susan was at the kitchen table one afternoon, a shoebox of bills on one side and the MyGov page open on the laptop. And she did the sum she'd been quietly avoiding for a year. The balance that was supposed to carry them comfortably into their 90s would be gone in a couple of years. She sat with it for a long while before she said anything, and she didn't tell David for nearly a week. That's how this actually happens. Not a crash, not a headline, just a quiet afternoon when the numbers finally catch up with you. So let's step back and look at what actually happened, because this is the lesson. David and Susan weren't reckless. They weren't unlucky in any dramatic way. They overspent early and got caught by a bad market. They panicked into cash and got deemed on it. They lived in fear because they didn't understand the pension safety net. They gave money away at the wrong time, and they never got the advice that would have caught all of it. Not one of those was a catastrophe on its own. Together, they drained a genuinely comfortable retirement down to the bone. And every single one was avoidable. And that's the good news hiding in this story. If you're watching this and you're not yet 75, none of David and Susan's mistakes are locked in for you. Spend your early retirement, but at a rate that lasts. Don't panic your money into cash where inflation and deeming both eat it. Understand that the age pension rises as your savings fall, so you can enjoy your healthy years without dread. Learn the gifting rules before you help the kids. And get one proper advice session early. It pays for itself many times over. David and Susan's story is a warning, but it's also a map. Every wrong turn they took has a right one, and you still have time to take it. 2 honest notes before you go. First, the rules, rates and thresholds mentioned here change, so confirm the current figures with Services Australia and the ATO before you act on anything. Second, this is general information, not personal advice. David and Susan are a made-up example, and your situation is your own, so this is exactly the kind of thing to take to a licensed financial advisor or a free financial information service appointment through Services Australia, while you've still got time to plan. If David and Susan reminded you of someone or of a fear you've had yourself, tell me in the comments. Which of the 5 mistakes worries you most? It helps me know what to go deeper on next. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.